Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the fascinating science behind why our drive fades, and more importantly, how we can actually sustain it over the long haul.
So, right off the bat, I want you to think about a goal you were completely fired up about earlier this year. Maybe it was losing a few pounds, going after a big promotion, or finally kicking a bad habit. For those first few days, you probably felt absolutely unstoppable, right? But here's the uncomfortable question. Are you still sticking to it?
If you aren't, honestly, don't beat yourself up. Roughly 45% of people abandon their resolutions in the very first month. And notice I said the first month, not the first year. Everyone just assumes this is a willpower issue, like a lack of personal discipline, but it's really not. It's actually a science problem. You see, your brain operates by very specific, predictable rules when it comes to motivation, and today we're going to unpack exactly what those are.
Take this famous MIT study, for example. It pretty much challenged everything we thought we knew about incentives. They wanted to test the old idea that bigger rewards equal more motivation. For a simple mechanical task, think just tapping keyboard keys as fast as humanly possible. Offering a huge $300 reward worked like a charm. That group performed 95% better. But when the researchers swapped that out for a cognitive task that required real thought, like complex math problems, the results completely flipped. The group offered the big cash reward actually performed 32% worse. I mean, think about that. More money literally made people worse at the exact task the money was supposed to motivate them to do.
This perfectly illustrates what researchers call distraction theory. When you're doing something that requires emotional focus or creativity, a massive external reward actually hijacks your attention. So instead of focusing on the problem right in front of you, you start obsessing over the money or the promotion or the number on the scale. And that adds this intense layer of performance-killing pressure that absolutely destroys your natural ability to get the work done.
Since standard external rewards can literally ruin our performance on complex tasks, we clearly need a new game plan. Here's our scientific roadmap for today. First, we'll look at your brain on rewards. Then, rethinking your goals. Third, overcoming mental traps. And finally, sustaining your drive.
Okay, let's jump straight into section 1 and see what MRI scans actually reveal about the brain's motivation center. When scientists look inside the anterior striatum and prefrontal cortex, which are basically your brain's engines for self-driven motivation, things get really interesting. When you do something just because you enjoy it, those areas light right up. Add a reward, they stay lit. But here is the massive catch. If you add a reward to an activity you already enjoy and then take it away, your motivation doesn't just go back to its normal baseline. It completely collapses, often dropping way below where it started before the reward was even introduced. You're basically replacing your genuine internal motivation with a rented one, and the moment the rent isn't paid, your drive just vanishes.
Let's move on to section 2 and see how this neuroscience changes the way we should actually be setting our goals. Strategy 1 requires a total mindset shift. Think about this staggering stat. 67% of gym memberships go completely unused. Why? Well, because people try to pick the optimal activity instead of one they actually like. They force themselves into some miserable treadmill routine just because an influencer said it burns the most calories. But science tells us that enjoyment is literally the single strongest predictor of whether a long-term habit will survive. So stop choosing activities you dread. If you hate running, try boxing or swimming, or even just hiking. If you don't genuinely enjoy it, no amount of guilt is going to make it stick.
Strategy 2 is all about anchoring your motivation to immediate benefits. Researchers tracked two groups of people exercising. The group that was working out purely to hit some distant target weight, they quit much faster. But the group working out just to achieve a better mood and get more energy for their day, they ended up exercising 32% longer on average. A distant goal gives your brain almost no tangible reward to keep pushing today. But feeling more energetic this afternoon? Now that is an immediate, daily payoff that makes your brain actually want to do it all again tomorrow.
Strategy 3 tackles a huge misconception. We've all been told to practice relentless positive visualization, right? Well, actually, science says pure positive thinking can backfire big time. If you vividly imagine the win, your brain triggers a tiny sense of satisfaction, like you've already achieved it, which bizarrely reduces your drive and urgency to actually do the work. Instead, you need what's called mental contrasting. Sure, picture the win, but then immediately and specifically visualize the obstacle standing in your way. If your goal is to finish a big project, picture the exact distraction that usually derails you. This pulls your brain out of fantasy land and forces it into active problem solving. Now that we've got better goals, let's hit section 3 and look at the psychological traps that cause us to just suddenly throw in the towel.
Have you ever wondered why one tiny mistake often causes a total meltdown? Researchers studied dieters and found something super fascinating. Participants who were forced to have a small milkshake, basically breaking their diet just a tiny bit, were actually way more likely to binge on ice cream right afterward, compared to people who didn't have the milkshake at all. So why did a tiny slip-up trigger a massive binge?
The key here is recognizing what researchers actually call the what the hell effect. It's a real thing. The dieters thought, well, I've already ruined it today, so what the hell, I might as well eat whatever I want. It's a cognitive trap where you treat a minor stumble like a complete failure, which basically gives you permission to just completely collapse. Listen, one skipped workout does not erase a month of progress, and one overspend day doesn't ruin your entire budget, unless you fall into the trap of letting it. The goal isn't perfection, it's catching this specific thought before it spirals out of control.
All right, section 4. Let's bring all of this together and build a reliable framework for your long-term success.
These 4 evidence-backed strategies are what give your drive the structure it needs to survive way past that initial hype. First, you've got to choose activities you genuinely enjoy. Second, focus on immediate, tangible feelings, not just some abstract finish line in the future. Third, use mental contrasting to actively plan for the hurdles in your way. And finally, you absolutely have to catch that what the hell cognitive trap early before a tiny stumble turns into a full surrender.
It's a massive paradigm shift when you realize motivation isn't this raging fire you have to keep blazing through sheer, exhausting force. It's actually a really fragile resource that you have to carefully protect. And you protect it by removing the things that quietly extinguish it, like those massive external rewards that hijack your attention, or distant goals with zero immediate payoff, or the trap of pure positive fantasy. The people who sustain their drive for years, they aren't necessarily more disciplined than you. They've just structured their lives using these exact principles.
So here is my challenge to you. Think about that goal you've been struggling with. Which of these 4 science-backed strategies are you going to apply to protect it this week? Because if human motivation isn't a blazing fire that we can just force into existence, but rather a fragile flame we have to carefully nurture, it kind of makes you wonder, what else about our own minds have we been completely misunderstanding? Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer. I'll see you next time.